My heart stopped when I saw it. A sleek tube of crimson lipstick half hidden under the passenger seat of my car. I had been reaching for a dropped wrench while changing the oil when my fingers brushed against it instead. As I pulled it out, the overhead fluorescent lights of my garage glinted off its gold casing. Expensive. Unfamiliar. Definitely not Amanda's shade. My wife wears coral, always coral. It complements my skin tone, she'd explained once years ago. I'd never seen her in red. I rolled the tube between my fingers, leaving greasy fingerprints on its polished surface. The garage suddenly felt colder. That single object in my palm weighed more than the car I was working on. David? You almost done down there? Amanda's voice floated down from upstairs, making me flinch. I quickly pocketed the lipstick, my hands trembling slightly. Almost, I called back, sliding under the car again. But I couldn't focus on the oil filter anymore. My mind raced with possibilities, most of them leading to places I didn't want to go. That was a week ago. Since then, I've been noticing things. Small things. Things that wouldn't matter in isolation but, strung together, form a pattern I can't ignore. Yesterday, I found a receipt in Amanda's coat pocket while doing laundry. Bellinate, that upscale Italian place downtown. Dinner for two with wine I knew she loved but I never ordered because it was too expensive for my taste. A place we'd never been together. The client's signature was clearly masculine, a scrawled, confident stroke that bore no resemblance to her neat handwriting. Expense report, she'd explained with a casual wave when I asked. Client dinner. But her eyes didn't quite meet mine and she changed the subject quickly. Tonight, I'm trying to mend things, though I haven't said what needs mending. I've prepared her favorite lasagna, opened a bottle of wine from the year we were married. The dining room is lit with candles, a desperate attempt to rekindle something I'm suddenly afraid is dying. This is lovely, Amanda says, but she keeps checking her phone, which she's placed face down beside her plate. She looks beautiful tonight, more carefully put together than she's been in months for me. Her hair falls in perfect waves, her makeup is flawless, and she's wearing the pearl earrings I don't remember buying her. I thought we needed this, I tell her, pouring more wine. We've both been so busy lately. I miss you. Her smile doesn't reach her eyes. That's sweet. The conversation limps along, stilted and formal, like we're on an awkward first date rather than 8 years into a marriage. Then her phone buzzes. She glances at it and her expression changes, subtly, but I catch it. A slight widening of the eyes, a quick intake of breath. I'm so sorry, she says, standing suddenly. Emergency with the Westfield project. I need to meet a client. I watch as she hurries to grab her purse and coat. She's applying fresh lipstick, coral, always coral, and checking her reflection with an attention to detail that seems excessive for an emergency work meeting. At 9 p.m.? I ask. These developers are impossible, she says with a laugh that sounds rehearsed. But the commission is worth it. As she rushes toward the door, her elbow catches our wedding photo on the side table. The frame crashes to the floor, the glass splintering across the hardwood. For a moment, she freezes, staring at our smiling faces now behind a web of cracks. I'll clean it up later, she says, not meeting my eyes. And then she's gone. I sit alone at our candlelit table, staring at the broken frame. My grandfather's words echo in my head. When something starts coming apart at the seams, you'll see just one thread first. I've never been a jealous man, never had reason to be. But this thread has been unraveling for longer than I've allowed myself to notice. I take another sip of wine, then pull out my phone and call Matt from work. Hey buddy, what's up? He answers. That offer to borrow your car still good? Just for tonight? There's a pause on the line. Matt knows me well enough to hear what I'm not saying. Yeah, of course. Everything okay? Not sure yet, I reply, looking at the shattered glass around our wedding photo. But I think I need to find out. 20 minutes later, I'm parked across the street from Amanda's office building in Matt's nondescript gray sedan. The lights in her firm are dark. No emergency meeting there. I wait, engine running, wondering if I've completely lost my mind. And then I see her car pull into the lot of the upscale Hotel Azuria 6 blocks down. Even from this distance, I can see she's not alone. I couldn't breathe. My lungs felt like they'd collapsed as I watched Amanda step out of her car. The hotel's blue-tinted lights cast an eerie glow over her face as she checked her reflection in the window. She smoothed her dress, the midnight blue one she'd bought for client presentations, and applied a fresh coat of lipstick. Not coral. Red. Then he appeared. Tall, confident, wearing a tailored suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. His silver-flecked hair caught the light as he approached her with the easy familiarity of someone who had done this many times before. They didn't kiss, but his smile when he saw her told me everything I needed to know. So did the way his hand settled on the small of her back as they walked into the Hotel Azuria. My fingers trembled as I reached for my phone. I snapped several photos, though I'm not sure why. Evidence? For whom? The court of my own doubts? I sat there for hours, or maybe it was minutes. Time had become slippery, untrustworthy. The car's interior felt like a decompression chamber, a small pocket of reality while everything outside had transformed into something unrecognizable. I was experiencing quantum theory firsthand, the subject I'd obsessed over in college. Multiple universes existing simultaneously. In one universe, my wife was at a late business meeting. In another, our marriage was a lie. I had slipped from one reality into another without warning. Back in our house. No, not ours anymore, I realized. I poured myself another glass of wine and opened our digital photo album. 8 years of memories. I swiped through them chronologically, watching as Amanda's smile changed over time. In our early photos, her eyes crinkled at the corners, her whole face illuminated. By year 5, her smiles became practiced, camera-ready. Empty. How had I missed that? In one photo from last Christmas, she was looking over my shoulder at something, or someone, out of frame. I zoomed in on her eyes and saw a spark there I hadn't noticed before. Not for me. The front door opened at midnight. I closed the laptop but remained at the dining table, candles now burned to stubs, wine mostly gone. The scent hit me before she entered the room, an expensive male cologne, woody and intense. Dior Savage. I'd seen Johnny Depp's face plastered across department store displays advertising it. "Hey," she said casually, dropping her keys in the bowl by the door. "Sorry about earlier. That client is incredibly demanding, but the project is worth it." She slipped off her heels and padded into the kitchen, opening the refrigerator as if nothing was wrong, as if she hadn't just shattered our life together. I watched her movements, searching for signs of guilt or remorse. There were none. I had planned to confront her with anger, to throw accusations and evidence at her. Instead, I found myself taking her hand when she approached the table. "Amanda," I said quietly, "are you still happy with me?" She froze momentarily, her eyes widening almost imperceptibly before she regained control. "Of course. Why would you ask that?" I didn't answer immediately. I just held her gaze, watching as she expertly maintained her composure. 8 years together and I was looking at a stranger. "You know," I finally said, unlocking my phone and sliding it toward her. On the screen was the photo I'd taken earlier, her and the silver-haired man entering the hotel, his hand possessively guiding her forward. I expected denials, excuses, tears. Instead, her expression hardened, a cold calculation replacing any pretense of warmth. "So you're spying on me now?" she said, her voice cutting through the silence. Typical controlling behavior. The abrupt shift staggered me. In an instant, I'd gone from wronged husband to villain in her narrative. Controlling? "Amanda, I just watched you enter a hotel with another man." "You followed me," she countered, stepping away from the table. "Do you have any idea how disturbed that is? How paranoid you sound right now?" I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "What about the lipstick in my car? The receipt from Bellinate? The cologne you're wearing right now that isn't mine?" "Circumstantial," she said dismissively, grabbing her phone from the table. But her movements were too quick, too defensive. The phone slipped from her hand, clattering to the floor. It landed face up, screen still illuminated. A text notification appeared, "Architect, tomorrow, same time." I found the perfect spot for us. She lunged for the phone, but I was quicker. I snatched it up, my heart pounding as I swiped open the message thread labeled simply, "Architect." What I saw confirmed every fear and suspicion. Messages planning meetups. Photos of expensive riverside condominiums. And one text that gutted me, "Our structure is almost complete. When will you shed the dead weight?" Amanda clawed at my hand, her cool facade cracking. "Give me my phone." "Dead weight," I repeated, my voice hollow. "Is that what I am to you?" She stepped back, shoulders squared, apparently deciding on a new strategy. "Fine. Yes, I'm seeing someone. Richard. He's an architect. He understands me." "How long?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Her eyes, once warm brown pools I'd happily drowned in, had turned to ice. "Long enough to know he's better suited for me." In that moment, standing in our dining room surrounded by the ruins of the evening I'd planned to save our marriage, I realized I'd been living in the wrong reality all along. Controlling? Really? That's where you want to take this? I shook my head in disbelief. The woman standing before me, This stranger wearing my wife's face had pivoted from being caught in a betrayal to painting me as the villain with breathtaking efficiency. What would you call secretly following your spouse? Amanda shot back, arms crossed defensively across her chest. That's not normal behavior, David. Neither is having an affair, I countered, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Neither is lying about where you're going, who you're with. Neither is whatever this is. I held up her phone, the evidence of her duplicity glowing accusingly in my hand. You had no right to look at my phone. Her voice had taken on a rehearsed quality, as if she were performing for an invisible audience. This is a violation of my privacy. I watched her with a strange detachment, seeing her tactics with new clarity. It reminded me of chess, a game I'd played competitively in college. She was sacrificing a pawn to save her queen. Admitting to the affair but redirecting blame to make my transgression seem worse than hers. Who is Richard? I asked, ignoring her attempt to shift focus. Her expression flickered momentarily before settling back into righteous indignation. A colleague. Now he's more than that. The architect, I said, looking down at her phone. Interesting contact name. Before she could respond, I scrolled through the messages, each one driving the knife deeper. Lunch dates disguised as client meetings. Weekend getaways labeled as professional conferences. The meticulous documentation of a double life. Give me my phone, David. Her voice had turned cold, calculating. I continued scrolling, finding photos of jewelry, earrings she'd claimed were a gift from a colleague for helping with a project. A reservation at a spa retreat she'd attended for a team-building exercise. The careful architecture of lies had foundations going back months, perhaps longer. Suddenly she lunged forward, trying to snatch the phone from my hand. In the struggle, it slipped from both our grasps, landing on the hardwood floor with a sickening crack. The screen flickered but remained illuminated, now displaying a photo of a sleek, modern condominium with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. Amanda froze, her eyes fixed on the image. What is this place? I asked quietly. She straightened, smoothing her dress with steady hands. In that moment, I realized she'd made a decision. The pretense was over. Our future home, she said with startling composure. Richard's designing the interior specifically for me. For you, I repeated. Not for both of you? A small, cold smile played across her lips. His wife might have something to say about that. For now. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. He's married? And you're okay with that? His marriage is a business arrangement, she said dismissively. They barely speak. He's been planning his exit strategy for months. Exit strategy. The clinical detachment in her voice chilled me. Had I been just an exit strategy for her at some point too? So Richard the architect is building you a perfect life, I said, the pieces finally clicking into place. New home, new job, new status. He understands ambition, Amanda replied, retrieving her cracked phone from the floor. He sees my potential. He's helping me create something meaningful. And what was this? I gestured around our home, the home we'd chosen together, the life we'd built. What have the last 8 years been? She sighed as if explaining something obvious to a child. You never built anything with me, David. We just existed. Day after day in this mediocrity. She waved her hand dismissively at our living room, our photos, our shared history. You never wanted more, she continued. You've been content with your steady job, your predictable life. I need someone who challenges me, who helps me grow. So you've been planning this transition for how long? I asked, my voice hollow. Does it matter? Her lack of remorse was stunning, her emotional detachment complete. I thought back to the first day we met, how I'd believed her smile was meant just for me. How I trusted every word, every touch, every promise. The foundation of our relationship, what I'd thought was solid concrete, had been sand all along. The earrings, I said suddenly. The ones you're wearing now. They're from him, aren't they? She instinctively reached up to touch the pearl drops at her ears, the ones she'd claimed were a gift from a female colleague. Another lie in the intricate blueprint of deception she'd drafted. Yes, she admitted, no longer bothering to conceal the truth. He has excellent taste. And the weekend in Chicago last month? The architectural conference? We were scouting locations. For after. After you left me, I finished for her. She didn't deny it. Instead, she picked up her purse, her movements deliberate and calm. I'm going to sleep in the guest room tonight. We can discuss practical arrangements tomorrow. As she walked away, her silhouette framed in the doorway, I found my voice one last time. Was any of it real, Amanda? She paused, not turning around. It was real until it wasn't. Then she was gone, leaving me alone with the shattered remains of what I'd thought was our life together. The next 3 days unfolded in excruciating slow motion. Amanda still lived in our house, but we orbited each other like hostile planets, her gravitational pull now something to be avoided rather than embraced. She slept in the guest room, left early for work and returned late. When we did cross paths, the silence between us was dense enough to suffocate. I took a week off work, claiming a family emergency. In a way, it wasn't a lie. My family, what I'd thought was my family, was indeed in the midst of a catastrophic event. As a financial analyst, I'd spent my career solving complex problems through methodical analysis. Numbers had always been my refuge, my way of making sense of an often senseless world. So I did what came naturally. I approached my collapsing marriage like a complicated equation that needed solving. Step 1. Gather all available data. I began with our shared finances. Amanda and I maintained joint accounts for household expenses, though we each kept separate accounts for personal use. I downloaded 2 years of statements and created a spreadsheet, tracking every transaction. The pattern emerged almost immediately. For the past 8 months, Amanda had been withdrawing cash in mathematically perfect intervals. $200 every 2 weeks, always on a Thursday, always from the same ATM near her office. The consistency was almost admirable, a precise financial algorithm designed to go unnoticed within our regular expenses. I contacted our bank directly, using the joint account access to request information on any linked accounts. The customer service representative hesitated. "Sir, it appears your wife opened a separate savings account 6 months ago. It's not technically linked to your joint account, but she set up automatic transfers. Can you tell me how much has been transferred?" I asked, my voice carefully controlled. "I'm showing regular transfers of $200 bi-weekly, plus an additional one-time transfer of $15,000 from her personal account last month." $15,000. I sat back in my chair, letting the number sink in. That explained the investment account she'd convinced me to liquidate for home renovations, that had somehow never materialized. "Would you like me to provide statements for that account as well, sir? Since you're joint holders on the primary account." "Please," I said, my fingers tightening around the phone. The bank emails arrived within minutes. They provided a crystal-clear picture of Amanda's financial extraction plan, systematic, careful, and thoroughly calculated to fly under my radar. But the revelation that truly froze the blood in my veins came that evening. While Amanda was out, with Richard I presumed, I searched her laptop. It wasn't password protected. She'd never believed she needed to hide anything from me. The irony wasn't lost on me. There, in her downloads folder, was a digital copy of a lease agreement for a new apartment, signed by Amanda just 2 weeks ago. The move-in date was exactly 1 month from now. She'd been planning her departure with the precision of a military campaign. What struck me most, however, wasn't that she'd signed a lease. It was that the co-signer wasn't the architect at all. It was a woman named Sophia Crane. I ran a quick search. Sophia Crane was a partner at Meridian Design, the same prestigious architectural firm where Richard presumably worked. Why would she co-sign Amanda's lease, not Richard? I dug deeper, accessing Amanda's email through the auto-saved password on her browser. There it was, correspondence with Sophia discussing the lease, the move, and veiled references to Amanda's situation and fresh start. By midnight, I had compiled all my findings into a comprehensive document, cross-referenced and annotated like a financial prospectus. The elegant equation of Amanda's betrayal was laid bare in spreadsheets, emails, and bank statements. When she returned home just after 1 a.m., I was waiting in the living room, my evidence arranged neatly on the coffee table. "We need to talk," I said as she tried to slip past to the guest room. She paused, annoyed. "It's late, David." "Yes, it is," I agreed. "About 6 months too late by my calculations." Her eyes narrowed as she noticed the papers spread before me. "What is this?" "This," I said, gesturing to my compiled evidence, "is the mathematical proof of your exit strategy. It's quite elegant, really. Einstein would have appreciated the formula." She stared at the documents, her face cycling through shock, anger, and finally, a strange form of respect. "You weren't supposed to notice," she said quietly, sitting down across from me. "That was the point, wasn't it? Small enough withdrawals to stay under the radar. Gradual enough preparations that I wouldn't see the pattern until you were ready to reveal it." She didn't deny it, just picked up one of the bank statements, studying it with clinical detachment. "At least I had a plan," she finally said, placing the paper back on the table. You never look beyond the next quarter. Life isn't a balance sheet, David. No, but betrayal apparently is. Tell me about Sophia Crane. Amanda's eyebrows raised slightly, the only indication of surprise she allowed herself. You've been thorough. Financial analysis is what I do. She sighed, leaning back into the couch. Sophia is Richard's business partner. She's helping me with transitional logistics. Interesting choice of cosigner. Not your boyfriend? It's complicated. I'm sure it is, I replied, closing my laptop. I've calculated exactly how complicated over the last 72 hours. That night, after our conversation ended in strained silence, Amanda packed an overnight bag. Standing at our front door, she turned to me with an expression I couldn't quite read. There's no point in prolonging this charade, she said. I'll be staying elsewhere until I can move into the new place. As the door closed behind her, I realized that some equations, once solved, leave you with answers you never wanted to find. 3 days after Amanda left, I noticed the family photo album was missing. Not the digital one on our shared cloud account, the physical one, leather-bound and carefully curated, that had sat on our bookshelf since our first anniversary. Along with it, the external hard drive containing backups of our wedding photos and vacation memories had vanished. She'd taken our past with her, as if by possessing the physical evidence of our life together, she could control the narrative. I sat in my empty living room, bourbon in hand, surrounded by the ghostly outlines where picture frames had once stood. Amanda had been selective in what she took. The elegant crystal vase her parents gave us, but not the matching candle holders, the painting we'd bought in Santorini, but not the Moroccan tapestry hanging beside it, her books, but only the ones with presentation value. She curated her exit as carefully as an exhibition. The silence in the house was deafening. I picked up my phone and scrolled through contacts until I found Eric, my old college roommate who now ran an IT security firm. I hadn't spoken to him in nearly a year, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Dave? Is that really you? Eric's voice boomed through the speaker. Man, I was beginning to think you'd fallen off the planet. Something like that, I replied. Listen, I need your expertise. How good are you at data recovery? 2 days later, Eric was seated at my kitchen table, his laptop connected to what remained of our home network, fingers flying across the keyboard with practiced precision. So she just left? He asked, eyes never leaving the screen. No warning? Oh, there were warnings, I said. I just didn't see them until it was too late. Eric nodded sympathetically, continuing his digital excavation. She was thorough, I'll give her that. But no one ever truly deletes anything anymore. It's all just hidden, waiting to be found. Like digital ghosts, I murmured. Exactly. He pointed to his screen. Speaking of which, I found something interesting. Emails she thought she'd deleted before disconnecting her accounts from your home network. The backup server cached them. I leaned forward, chest tightening. What kind of emails? Correspondence with someone named Richard Cortez. Lots of it. Dating back almost a year. The name hit me like a physical blow. Richard Cortez, the architect, now had a full name. Can you recover them? Eric's smile was all the answer I needed. Already working on it. Also, there's something else. Login records show she accessed your investment accounts multiple times over the past few months. By evening, Eric had recovered a trove of digital artifacts. Deleted emails, browser history, file access logs. The picture they painted was even more calculated than I'd imagined. Richard Cortez wasn't just an architect, he was a senior partner at Meridian Design, an international architectural firm with offices in major cities across the country. The emails between him and Amanda weren't just romantic, they were strategic. They detailed plans for her career advancement, using his connections to secure her a position at Meridian. Look at this one, Eric said, highlighting an email from last September. She outlines her entire career trajectory with Richard pulling strings at key moments. I read the email, my stomach churning. Richard, I've updated my portfolio as you suggested. The residential projects are now prominently featured, and I've downplayed the commercial work I did with Davis and Parker. When you introduce me to the board next month, I want them to see me as the perfect fit for the lakefront renewal project. I can't thank you enough for this opportunity. Finally escaping mediocrity and working with people who understand true ambition. These past years have been suffocating. Counting the days until Chicago. Chicago? I whispered. She told me that was a conference. Eric gave me a sympathetic look. There's more, but I'm not sure you want to see it all today. I need to know everything, Eric. No matter how bad. He hesitated, then opened another folder. I found this on an old flash drive in your home office. It looks like Amanda never expected you to check it. The folder contained photos from before I knew Amanda, university days according to the timestamps. But what caught my attention were the images of her with another man. They looked happy, intimate, wrapped in each other's arms on a beach, laughing in a bar, kissing beneath string lights at what appeared to be a campus event. Who is that? I asked, squinting at the unfamiliar face. According to the file names and some cross-referenced social media, his name is Aiden Mitchell. There's something else. Eric pulled up a scanned image, a handwritten note on the back of a printed photo. For Aiden, my forever harbor. I sat back, mind reeling. She told me about an Aiden once. She said he was an obsessive ex who stalked her after they broke up. That she had to change her phone number to get away from him. Eric raised an eyebrow. These don't look like photos of someone being stalked. They look genuinely happy. I picked up my bourbon, draining the glass. Can you find him? This Aiden? Already on it. Eric typed rapidly. He's not hard to track down. He's a senior editor at Baldwin Publishing now, specializing in legal textbooks. Lives about 2 hours from here. As Eric continued his digital archaeology, my phone pinged with a notification. It was an email from a headhunter I'd spoken with months ago, checking if I was still interested in positions outside the area. At the time, I declined, unwilling to uproot our life together. Another notification followed, Amanda's social media update. She'd accepted a position at Meridian Design's Chicago office, starting in 3 weeks. My past and her future, delivered in the same moment. I found Aiden's contact information, Eric announced. What do you want to do? I stared at the stranger smiling beside Amanda in those old photos. I think it's time I heard another side of her story. The park bench was neutral territory, public enough to be safe, private enough for honest conversation. I arrived early, watching joggers and dog walkers pass by, ordinary people living ordinary lives. How I envied them. Aiden Mitchell arrived precisely on time, his appearance a study in careful presentation. Tailored navy blazer, pressed slacks, expensive watch. Successful. Put together. But as he approached, I noticed something else, a wariness in his eyes, the slight tension in his shoulders. This was a man who had learned to be cautious. David? He asked, extending his hand. I nodded, shaking it firmly. Thanks for meeting me. He sat beside me, maintaining a careful distance. Your message was intriguing. You said you wanted to talk about Amanda? My wife, I confirmed, watching his reaction. Soon to be ex-wife, I suspect. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, perhaps even validation. I thought this chapter was closed, he said quietly, gazing out at the park. It's been 9 years? I need to understand, I said. You're part of a puzzle I'm trying to solve. Aiden ran a hand through his neatly trimmed hair, sighing. Amanda told you about me, I assume? She said you were obsessive. That you stalked her after she ended things. He laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. Of course she did. He reached into his messenger bag, withdrawing a worn leather portfolio. I've carried this for years, not really knowing why I kept it. Maybe I was waiting for this conversation. He opened it, revealing carefully preserved mementos. Movie ticket stubs, handwritten notes, photos, physical evidence of a relationship that had meant something at least to him. We were together for almost 2 years, he explained, turning pages slowly. We were planning to get married after graduation. He paused at a dog-eared catalog of engagement rings, a page marked with a sticky note. The ring displayed was a princess-cut diamond in a vintage setting. She picked this one, he said, tapping the image. The same style you gave her, I'm guessing? My stomach tightened. Amanda's engagement ring, the one I'd spent months saving for, was indeed a princess-cut diamond in an antique setting. She gasped when I proposed, claiming it was exactly what she would have chosen. She never just left, Aiden continued, his voice steadying as he shared his story. She destroyed me first. Told our friends I was controlling, obsessive, that I monitored her movements. By the time she was done, I had no friends left. Everyone believed her version. What actually happened? I asked, though I was beginning to see the pattern. I was an English literature major with teaching aspirations. Limited earning potential. His smile was sad. Then she met you, a rising financial analyst with corporate prospects. I became inconvenient. He showed me more photos. Amanda and him at parties, hiking trips, family gatherings. They looked happy, connected. Nothing like the stalker ex she described. She didn't just leave, he said. She crafted a narrative where she was the victim. I lost friends, changed jobs, moved cities. She has a talent for making herself the protagonist in everyone else's tragedy. She always positions herself as the victim, I murmured, remembering her immediate defensive stance when confronted. Aiden nodded. She has a gift for making you question your own reality. For her, people are just stepping stones. When she reaches a new level, the previous steps become unnecessary. The warning resonated like a bell through my consciousness. I thought about how Amanda and I had met, her accidentally bumping into me at the coffee shop near my office building, spilling her latte on my shirt, insisting on paying for dry cleaning. The perfect meet-cute that now seems suspiciously orchestrated. You know what's strange? Aiden said, closing his portfolio. After all this time, I still occasionally check her social media. Old habits. I saw she married you, successful, stable you. I thought maybe she'd finally found what she was looking for. Until someone better came along, I finished. He gave me a knowing look. An architect, I'm guessing? Someone creative, connected, with social status. Richard Cortez, I confirmed. Partner at Meridian Design. Aiden whistled low. Moving up in the world. Again. We sat in silence for a moment, two men united by the same painful experience, separated by years but connected by the same woman's ambition. You know, Aiden said finally, there's a Twilight Zone episode about a person who wears different masks for different people. At the end, they can't remove the final mask, it's fused to their face. You think that's Amanda? All masks, no real person underneath? He shrugged. I think after wearing masks for so long, even she doesn't know who she really is anymore. As we prepared to part ways, Aiden handed me his business card. Senior Editor, Baldwin Legal Publishing, it read. If you need anything, he offered. Or just someone who understands. The Amanda Support Group has a membership of at least 2 now. I managed to smile, my first genuine one in weeks. I appreciate that. Walking back to my car, I thought about patterns and repetitions, about how Amanda had perfected her technique with each iteration. With Aiden, she'd been less sophisticated, cruder in her exit strategy. With me, she'd refined her approach. With Richard, who knew what masterpiece of manipulation she was creating? One thing was certain, I was no longer the only man who had served as a stepping stone on Amanda's climb to whatever she considered success. The offices of Meridian Design occupied the top 3 floors of a gleaming downtown high-rise. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city, an architectural statement in itself. I'd scheduled my consultation under my middle name, James Harrison, claiming to be interested in residential redesign. The deception felt foreign on my tongue, but I was learning to navigate this new world where truth seemed optional. The receptionist directed me to a sleek conference room where Sophia Crane would meet me shortly. I'd researched her thoroughly, graduate of Cornell's architecture program, rising star at Meridian, known for innovative sustainable designs. The woman whose signature appeared alongside Amanda's on the lease agreement. When she entered, Sophia was exactly as her professional headshots suggested, poised, stylish, confident. Mid-30s with sharp features softened by a warm smile. The kind of person who commanded respect without demanding it. Mr. Harrison? I'm Sophia Crane. She extended her hand, then gestured to the materials she'd brought. I've prepared some examples of our residential work that might align with what you described over the phone. I let her proceed through her practice presentation for several minutes before interrupting. Ms. Crane, I should be honest with you. My name isn't James Harrison. Her presentation faltered momentarily, confusion crossing her face. I'm David Mercer, Amanda's husband. The portfolio slipped from her fingers, scattering glossy architectural renderings across the table. Her composed expression cracked, revealing apprehension beneath. I think our meeting is over, she said, already gathering her materials. I just want to talk, I said quickly. I need to understand what's happening. Your name is on her lease. Sophia hesitated, clearly calculating risks and outcomes. Finally, she sat back down, maintaining a careful distance. I assumed you knew more than I did, she admitted. Given your relationship. Apparently my wife and I have different definitions of marriage. And honesty. Something shifted in Sophia's demeanor, sympathy, perhaps, or recognition. She told me you were controlling. That you monitored her movements, restricted her career advancement. I couldn't help the bitter laugh that escaped me. That seems to be her standard exit narrative. Sophia reached for her phone, scrolling quickly before turning the screen toward me. Text messages from Amanda. So grateful to have found a true friend in you. David tracks every move I make. She positioned me as her confidant, Sophia explained. A fellow woman in architecture who understood professional challenges and difficult home situations. And the lease? Sophia sighed, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. She said you controlled all her finances, that she needed help establishing independence. I believed I was helping someone escape a bad situation. The pieces clicked into place. She used you not just for the apartment but for professional advancement too. You're on the hiring committee, aren't you? Her silence was confirmation enough. I recommended her for the Chicago position, Sophia admitted. Based on her portfolio and her story about needing to escape a toxic relationship. She's very good at creating compelling narratives, I said. I've recently discovered I'm not the first to star as the villain in her story. Sophia studied me with newfound interest. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone angry. Intimidating. Not. She gestured vaguely. Thoughtful. I leaned forward. What about Richard Cortez? Does his wife know about the arrangement? Sophia's eyes widened slightly. Vanessa? I don't think so. She hesitated before continuing. I don't think Amanda wants her to know. At least not yet. What do you mean? Richard is valuable to Amanda because of his position, his connections. Vanessa's family are major shareholders in the firm. If she found out, his career would be compromised, I finished. And Amanda would lose her advantage. Sophia nodded slowly. I've been watching how she operates these past months. She's strategic in her relationships. Strategic is one word for it. She has Richard convinced she's vulnerable, needs protection. She has me believing she's a victim needing support. The partners see her as ambitious but deferential. Sophia shook her head in reluctant admiration. Different masks for different audiences. The echo of Aiden's Twilight Zone reference sent a chill through me. Like a nuclear reaction, I murmured. Each lie splits and creates more lies, releasing more energy, more destruction. Sophia studied me for a long moment. You know, there are people for whom truth is merely a tool, not a principle. They use it when convenient, discard it when not. She gathered her materials, preparing to leave. You're fortunate not to be building a future with someone like that. As she reached the door, she turned back. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I wouldn't have facilitated any of this had I known. After she left, I remained in the conference room, staring at the city below. From this height, everything looked orderly, planned, purposeful. Individual chaos invisible from a distance. On my phone, I pulled up the last photo Amanda and I had taken together, a Christmas party just months ago. Her smile, once so captivating to me, now seemed like another architectural design. Carefully constructed, technically perfect, but ultimately hollow. I was learning that some structures, no matter how beautiful, are built on foundations that cannot stand. The message arrived on a Tuesday morning just as I was finishing my first cup of coffee. We need to discuss asset division. I deserve my fair share of our life together. My lawyer will be in touch. No greeting. No signature. Just Amanda, cutting to the chase with surgical precision. I hadn't heard from her in nearly 2 weeks, not since she'd cleared out her essentials and disappeared into her carefully constructed new life. The message shouldn't have surprised me, yet something about its cold formality still managed to wound. An hour later, I was sitting across from Gerald Hoffman, a divorce attorney recommended by a colleague. His office was understated but expensive, much like the man himself. Based on what you've told me, this won't be quick or clean, he warned, reviewing my notes. Someone this calculating won't just walk away. I have documentation of financial irregularities, I offered. Transfers she made without my knowledge, accounts she hid. Gerald nodded, but his expression remained grave. Helpful but not definitive. People like your wife, they never go quietly. They fight for every penny, every possession because in their mind they deserve it all. The word deserve echoed in my head, a perfect match to Amanda's text. I deserve my fair share. Returning home, I found the front door slightly ajar. A jolt of adrenaline shot through me until I remembered giving Eric a key so he could continue his digital forensics while I met with the lawyer. Eric? I called, stepping cautiously into the entryway. No answer. I moved through the house, noticing small disturbances, drawers not quite closed, cabinet doors ajar. In the home office, Amanda's old filing cabinet stood open, several folders missing. The wall safe behind the abstract painting was open and empty. Amanda had returned for more of her things. She'd still had a key, of course. I hadn't thought to change the locks. But something was off. The disarray seemed uncharacteristic of Amanda's methodical nature. Papers were scattered across the desk, drawers left open, as if she'd been searching for something specific in a hurry. On closer inspection, I realized the wall safe wasn't completely empty. A single manila folder remained, partially hidden in the back corner. Inside were medical receipts, a series of invoices from Elysium Aesthetic Surgery, dated throughout the previous year. The dates corresponded perfectly with Amanda's supposed business trips and client presentations, including the weekend I'd traveled alone to my uncle's funeral because she had claimed an unmissable presentation to potential clients. The procedures listed were extensive: minor facial treatments, injectable fillers, consultations for more substantial work. All carefully documented and all hidden from me. One notation caught my eye: preparation for life transition phase, priority scheduling approved. She'd been literally reconstructing herself for her new life with Richard. This discovery propelled me into a thorough investigation of our financial history. With Eric's help, I accessed archived statements, investment reports, and tax documents going back years. The pattern was clearer now. Amanda had been systematically preparing for her departure long before I'd found that lipstick in my car. "Look at this," Eric said, pointing to a series of transactions from our joint investment account. Small amounts regularly transferred to her personal account, then moved offshore. Started about a year ago. How much total? Just over $80,000. My stomach clenched. That represented a significant portion of our investment portfolio. Money we'd saved for our future, for the children we'd once talked about having. Further digging revealed emails between Amanda and Meridian Design dating back 10 months, long before I'd discovered her affair. She'd been negotiating her position, leveraging Richard's influence, while still coming home to me each night, still planning vacations together, still wearing the ring I'd given her. Eric also uncovered old correspondence between Amanda and Aiden that eerily mirrored our own relationship trajectory, the same patterns of love, manipulation, and ultimate betrayal, just less refined, less practiced. "It's like watching the same play with different actors," Eric observed, scrolling through the archived messages. "She's perfected her technique," I said. "With Aiden she was still learning. With me she improved her approach. With Richard, she's executing the master plan," Eric finished. That night, I sat alone in our living room, my living room now, surrounded by the evidence of Amanda's elaborate deception. Financial statements, medical receipts, emails, text messages, all painting a portrait of a woman I'd never truly known. I thought of Sophia's words about Amanda presenting different faces to different people, and Aiden's Twilight Zone reference about masks becoming permanent. It all made sense now. "Her entire life is a house of cards," I said aloud to the empty room. "Beautiful on the outside, but hollow within and ready to collapse at the first breath of truth." As if on cue, my phone chimed with a notification. A message request on social media from an unfamiliar name: Vanessa Cortez. "Are you David? Amanda's husband? We need to talk." The final card in Amanda's carefully constructed house was about to be pulled away. The cafe Vanessa Cortez selected was deliberately public. A busy spot downtown where business people rushed in for expensive lattes before hurrying back to their offices. She'd chosen a corner table with clear sight lines to both exits. The caution of someone expecting confrontation. I recognized her immediately from the photos I'd found during my research. Early 40s, elegant in that understated way that speaks of old money, wearing minimal makeup and a simple yet obviously expensive watch. Her eyes tracked me as I approached, wary, assessing, intelligent. "David?" she asked, although her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "Vanessa," I replied, taking the seat across from her. "Thank you for reaching out." She studied me for a moment, as if reconciling my actual appearance with whatever description Amanda might have provided. "I found your name in some documents on Richard's laptop." It wasn't difficult to connect the dots. "What documents?" Instead of answering, she placed her phone on the table between us, screen up. "I think we've been cast in the same play without knowing it." She scrolled through a series of photos, Richard and Amanda together in various locations, entering a hotel, dining at an upscale restaurant, walking through a park. The timestamps showed a relationship spanning months. "These aren't from a private investigator," I noted, examining the angles and quality. "I don't need to hire someone to do my research," she replied with the hint of a smile. "I've been tracking Richard's indiscretions for some time." She swiped to another set of images, text messages between Richard and Amanda. The intimacy in their exchanges was painful to see, but what caught my attention was Amanda's tone, vulnerable, almost childlike in her need for protection and validation. She's playing the victim, I observed. The woman who needs saving. Vanessa nodded. A role she's perfected, apparently. Here's the interesting part, she knew Richard was married from the beginning. She showed me earlier messages, dating from before I'd discovered the affair. She wasn't a victim of deception. She was hunting him. The evidence was irrefutable. Amanda had pursued Richard deliberately, strategically, all while knowing about Vanessa. More disturbingly, she had used that knowledge as leverage for her professional advancement. There's more, Vanessa continued, pulling several documents from her designer tote bag. The lease for her new apartment. Richard's signature as guarantor. I leaned forward, examining the document. That's odd. When I found the lease, Sophia Crane was listed as the co-signer. Vanessa's eyebrows raised slightly. That's because this signature is forged. Richard never signed this. It was one of my first red flags. She forged his signature? Why? My guess? To create a paper trail linking them, giving her leverage. Vanessa took a sip of her coffee. When confronted, Richard admitted he'd promised to help but never actually signed anything. Your wife took matters into her own hands. The calculation behind such a move was staggering. Amanda had been simultaneously building her escape route while creating insurance policies against potential betrayal. How did you find all this? I asked. I've been married to Richard for 15 years. His affairs usually follow a pattern. Young, ambitious women who see him as a stepping stone. Most fade away when they realize he'll never leave me. Her tone was matter-of-fact, devoid of bitterness. Your wife was different. More persistent. More strategic. She had a specific goal in mind, I agreed. The position at Meridian. Which she won't be getting, Vanessa stated calmly. I've already spoken with the board about the ethical implications of her relationship with Richard. The firm has a clear policy on relationships between senior partners and new hires. I processed this information, feeling an unexpected twist of emotions. Not satisfaction exactly, but perhaps a sense that the natural order was being restored. You seem very composed about all this, I observed. Vanessa shrugged elegantly. Richard and I have an understanding. His indiscretions remain discreet, and our public and financial lives remain intact. Your wife threatened that arrangement. By wanting more than just an affair. Precisely. She wanted his influence, his connections, his position, and ultimately, a legitimized relationship. Vanessa gathered her documents. I simply reminded relevant parties of the professional and personal costs of such an arrangement. As our meeting concluded, Vanessa handed me copies of everything she'd collected. For your divorce proceedings, she explained. I imagine they'll be contentious. Thank you, I said, genuinely grateful for this unexpected alliance. Don't thank me, she replied with startling honesty. I didn't do this for you. I protected what's mine. The following morning, my phone exploded with notifications. A barrage of texts from Amanda, each more frantic than the last. What did you do? They've rescinded the offer. The Chicago position is gone. That bitch Vanessa had no right to interfere. Did you hire someone to follow me? To dig into my life? Her final message revealed just how thoroughly her carefully constructed world was collapsing. Everything is falling apart. Are you happy now? I stared at the screen, contemplating my response. Finally, I typed 7 simple words. You built this house of cards yourself. 3 months passed in a blur of legal consultations, document filings, and meticulous preparation. I approached my divorce like any complex financial analysis, methodical, thorough, and evidence-based. The dossier I compiled was comprehensive. Bank statements, investment records, medical receipts, email correspondence, testimonials from Aiden, Sophia, and Vanessa. Truth had become my currency and I was suddenly wealthy. Amanda hired Bernard Clemens, a notoriously aggressive divorce attorney known for scorched earth tactics. The initial filing painted me as controlling and emotionally abusive, a man who tracked his wife's movements, restricted her professional growth, and drove her to seek safety elsewhere. I recognized the narrative. It was the same story she'd told about Aiden, the same one she'd fed to Sophia, the identical script she'd performed for anyone who would listen. The preliminary hearing was set for a Thursday morning. I arrived early, dressed in the same suit I'd worn to our wedding. Not out of nostalgia but because it was the most expensive one I owned, a gift from Amanda on our 5th anniversary. There seemed a poetic justice in wearing it now. Amanda entered flanked by her attorney, immaculately dressed in a conservative navy dress that projected both professionalism and victimhood. Her eyes met mine briefly, then darted away, finding the ceiling, the floor, the judge's bench, anywhere but my steady gaze. Her attorney spoke first, painting a dramatic picture of emotional control and psychological manipulation. He described a woman trapped in a suffocating marriage, desperate for freedom, who had finally found the courage to escape. My client seeks an equitable division of assets, Clemens concluded, and protection from further harassment by her husband, who has gone so far as to hire private investigators to track her movements and interfere with her professional opportunities. When my turn came, I simply placed my evidence binder on the table. Your Honor, I'd like to present a documented timeline of my marriage to Amanda Mercer, with supporting evidence. I proceeded through the chronology, starting with our wedding day and moving methodically through key events. Each allegation by Amanda was countered with dated, documented proof of her deceptions, financial records of her hidden accounts, evidence of her plastic surgery appointments during supposed business trips, emails revealing her 10-month negotiation with Meridian Design while still married to me, testimonials from Aiden about her identical pattern of behavior years earlier, Sophia's statement about the manipulative way Amanda had positioned herself as a victim needing assistance, Vanessa's evidence of Amanda's deliberate pursuit of Richard despite knowing he was married, including the forged lease document. As I presented each piece, I watched Amanda's carefully constructed facade crumble. The judge, an older woman with shrewd eyes that seemed to miss nothing, reviewed each document with growing interest. This is character assassination, Clemens protested halfway through. These personal details are irrelevant to the division of assets. On the contrary, the judge replied. Evidence of financial deception and manipulation is highly relevant to determining an equitable settlement. By the time I finished, the courtroom had fallen into a stunned silence. Amanda sat rigid, her expression unreadable, but the slight tremor in her hands betrayed her composure. The judge recommended dissolution based on irreconcilable differences, with a straightforward division of legally shared assets. Amanda would receive none of the properties, neither our shared home nor her new apartment secured through deception. Her career at Meridian Design was finished, and her reputation in professional circles severely damaged. As we exited the courtroom, Amanda grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in with surprising strength. "You destroyed everything," she hissed, her voice low enough that only I could hear. "Was revenge worth it?" "It wasn't revenge, Amanda," I replied calmly. "It was truth. Something you should try sometime." During the proceedings, additional evidence emerged that Amanda had maintained brief, overlapping relationships with several potential career stepping stones, an insurance strategy in case Richard didn't pan out. The pattern was clear, consistent, and undeniable. 1 month later, an unmarked envelope arrived at my new apartment across town. Inside was a photograph of Amanda with a different man, older, distinguished, wearing a university professor's tweed jacket, and a simple note: "History repeats itself." I scanned the image and forwarded it to Aiden with a brief message: "Some lessons we learn too late." His response came within minutes: "Some people never learn at all." That evening, I wandered into a bookstore, finding myself drawn to the physics section. As I browsed titles on quantum theory and parallel universes, someone reached for the same book I was examining. "Sorry," she said with a genuine smile. "I didn't see you there." "No problem," I replied, handing her the book. "Are you interested in quantum physics?" Her eyes lit up with authentic enthusiasm. "Fascinated by it, actually. The idea that reality might be different depending on the observer? That truth exists in all possible states until we choose to see it? It's mind-bending." As we moved to the cafe section of the bookstore to continue our conversation, I found myself thinking about parallel worlds once more. In one reality, I was still trapped in Amanda's web of deception. In another, I had discovered the truth but remained bitter and wounded. In this one, the one I had chosen, I was moving forward, wiser but not hardened. Truth exists in all realities simultaneously, even when we live in a world of illusions. The choice of which world to inhabit is ours alone. 3 months passed in a blur of legal consultations, document filings, and meticulous preparation. I approached my divorce like any complex financial analysis: methodical, thorough, and evidence-based. The dossier I compiled was comprehensive: bank statements, investment records, medical receipts, email correspondence, testimonials from Aiden, Sophia, and Vanessa. Truth had become my currency, and I was suddenly wealthy. Amanda hired Bernard Clemens, a notoriously aggressive divorce attorney known for scorched-earth tactics. The initial filing painted me as controlling and emotionally abusive, a man who tracked his wife's movements, restricted her professional growth, and drove her to seek safety elsewhere. I recognized the narrative. It was the same story she'd told about Aiden, the same one she'd fed to Sophia, the identical script she'd performed for anyone who would listen. The preliminary hearing was set for a Thursday morning. I arrived early, dressed in the same suit I'd worn to our wedding. Not out of nostalgia but because it was the most expensive one I owned, a gift from Amanda on our 5th anniversary. There seemed a poetic justice in wearing it now. Amanda entered flanked by her attorney, immaculately dressed in a conservative navy dress that projected both professionalism and victimhood. Her eyes met mine briefly, then darted away, finding the ceiling, the floor, the judge's bench, anywhere but my steady gaze. Her attorney spoke first, painting a dramatic picture of emotional control and psychological manipulation. He described a woman trapped in a suffocating marriage, desperate for freedom, who had finally found the courage to escape. My client seeks an equitable division of assets, Clemens concluded, and protection from further harassment by her husband, who has gone so far as to hire private investigators to track her movements and interfere with her professional opportunities. When my turn came, I simply placed my evidence binder on the table. Your Honor, I'd like to present a documented timeline of my marriage to Amanda Mercer, with supporting evidence. I proceeded through the chronology, starting with our wedding day and moving methodically through key events. Each allegation by Amanda was countered with dated, documented proof of her deceptions, financial records of her hidden accounts, evidence of her plastic surgery appointments during supposed business trips, emails revealing her 10-month negotiation with Meridian Design while still married to me, testimonials from Aiden about her identical pattern of behavior years earlier, Sophia's statement about the manipulative way Amanda had positioned herself as a victim needing assistance, Vanessa's evidence of Amanda's deliberate pursuit of Richard despite knowing he was married, including the forged lease document. As I presented each piece, I watched Amanda's carefully constructed facade crumble. The judge, an older woman with shrewd eyes that seemed to miss nothing, reviewed each document with growing interest. This is character assassination, Clemens protested halfway through. These personal details are irrelevant to the division of assets. On the contrary, the judge replied. Evidence of financial deception and manipulation is highly relevant to determining an equitable settlement. By the time I finished, the courtroom had fallen into a stunned silence. Amanda sat rigid, her expression unreadable, but the slight tremor in her hands betrayed her composure. The judge recommended dissolution based on irreconcilable differences, with a straightforward division of legally shared assets. Amanda would receive none of the properties, neither our shared home nor her new apartment secured through deception. Her career at Meridian Design was finished, and her reputation in professional circles severely damaged. As we exited the courtroom, Amanda grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in with surprising strength. "You destroyed everything," she hissed, her voice low enough that only I could hear. "Was revenge worth it?" "It wasn't revenge, Amanda," I replied calmly. "It was truth. Something you should try sometime." During the proceedings, additional evidence emerged that Amanda had maintained brief, overlapping relationships with several potential career stepping stones, an insurance strategy in case Richard didn't pan out. The pattern was clear, consistent, and undeniable. 1 month later, an unmarked envelope arrived at my new apartment across town. Inside was a photograph of Amanda with a different man, older, distinguished, wearing a university professor's tweed jacket, and a simple note: "History repeats itself." I scanned the image and forwarded it to Aiden with a brief message: "Some lessons we learn too late." His response came within minutes: "Some people never learn at all." That evening, I wandered into a bookstore, finding myself drawn to the physics section. As I browsed titles on quantum theory and parallel universes, someone reached for the same book I was examining. "Sorry," she said with a genuine smile. "I didn't see you there." "No problem," I replied, handing her the book. "Are you interested in quantum physics?" Her eyes lit up with authentic enthusiasm. "Fascinated by it, actually. The idea that reality might be different depending on the observer? That truth exists in all possible states until we choose to see it? It's mind-bending." As we moved to the cafe section of the bookstore to continue our conversation, I found myself thinking about parallel worlds once more. In one reality, I was still trapped in Amanda's web of deception. In another, I had discovered the truth but remained bitter and wounded. In this one, the one I had chosen, I was moving forward, wiser but not hardened. Truth exists in all realities simultaneously, even when we live in a world of illusions. The choice of which world to inhabit is ours alone.